The wrench slipped from my grease-stained fingers as my daughter's voice carried through the thin bedroom wall. 3 a.m, and I'm under the hood of my beat-up Ford in our cramped garage, trying to fix what 15 years of Willowfield winters had broken. Mom, why do you hate Dad so much? Sophie's voice cracked with exhaustion. You said Mark makes you feel alive. Does Dad even know? I froze. Mark, that pretty boy real estate agent from the gym, the one who always wore cologne to lift weights and drove a BMW he couldn't actually afford. The one who'd been asking too many questions about my wife lately. Nothing like overhearing your wife's lover's name from your own 15-year-old daughter. Welcome to Willowfield population, idiots and the people who married them. My name's Nick Larkin, 39 years old, ex-Navy SEAL turned contractor in a town where half the buildings are falling down and the other half should be. I fix things for a living, pipes, roofs, marriages that can't be fixed. Erin, my wife of 16 years, is a lawyer at Patterson and Associates downtown. She makes 3 times what I do and never lets me forget it. Through the wall, I heard Erin's voice, cold and sharp like always. Your father doesn't understand ambition, Sophie. Some people are content being small-town nobodies forever. I wiped my hands on an old rag, my jaw clenched tight. Small-town nobody, right. The same small-town nobody who'd pulled her out of debt from law school, who'd worked double shifts to keep us afloat while she built her career, who'd held her hair back when morning sickness nearly killed her during Sophie's pregnancy. But Mark pushed me today, Mom. At the hotel. He said I was ruining your fun. My blood went cold. Hotel? What hotel? Sophie, you can't tell your father about this. Promise me. Mark was just stressed about work. You know how men get. I knew how men get, all right. Especially men who put their hands on my daughter. The next morning came gray and bitter, like every morning in Willowfield since the textile mill closed 10 years ago. Main Street looked like a mouth missing half its teeth. Empty storefronts, faded signs, and the kind of desperation that seeps into your bones if you stay too long. I dropped Sophie off at Willowfield High, watching her disappear into the crowd of kids who all looked like they were serving time instead of getting an education. She'd been quiet in the truck, picking at the sleeve of her jacket. Dad, she said before getting out, do you think people can change? Like, really change who they are? Depends on what they're changing from and what they're changing to, I said. Why? She shrugged, but I caught something in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or shame. Just wondering. After she left, I sat in my truck for a long time, watching the school and thinking about hotel rooms and pretty boys who pushed teenage girls around. Erin had left early that morning, another client meeting that would run late. She'd been having a lot of those lately. I drove to Murphy's Gym, a converted warehouse on the south side of town where the rent was cheap and the equipment was older than some of the guys using it. Tank Morrison, my old SEAL buddy, ran the place. He was spotting some college kid on the bench press when I walked in. You look like hell, Larkin, Tank said, not looking up. Trouble at home? You could say that. I started wrapping my hands for the heavy bag. What do you know about Mark Heller? Tank's expression darkened. Pretty boy? Real estate guy with the fancy car and the fake teeth? What about him? He's been spending time with my wife. And apparently my daughter. The college kid finished his set and wandered off. Tank lowered his voice. Word of advice from someone who's seen combat. Don't go nuclear until you know the full situation. But when you do go nuclear, he smiled grimly, make sure there's nothing left standing. I spent an hour beating the heavy bag until my knuckles were raw and my shirt was soaked with sweat. But I couldn't punch away the image of some sleazy real estate agent putting his hands on Sophie. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done in 16 years of marriage. I followed my wife. Erin's law office was in one of the few buildings downtown that hadn't given up yet. Patterson and Associates occupied the second floor, with a view of the courthouse and the statue of some Civil War general nobody remembered. I parked across the street and waited. At 5:30, Erin came out wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Red, expensive looking, the kind of thing she used to say was too flashy for a small-town lawyer. She got into her silver Lexus and drove east, toward the highway. I followed at a distance, my truck's engine growling like it was as angry as I was. She took the exit toward Millbrook, the next town over, where they'd built a new hotel and conference center for business travelers who didn't want to stay in Willowfield's one remaining motel. The Millbrook Grand Hotel was everything Willowfield wasn't. Modern, clean, expensive. Erin's car was already in the parking lot when I arrived. So was a blue BMW with vanity plates that read, "Sold One," Mark Heller's car. I parked behind a delivery truck and waited. 20 minutes later, they came out of the hotel lobby together. Erin was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on his arm. He was tall, tan, and wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. They looked like a couple. They looked happy. They looked like everything I wasn't. I took out my phone and snapped a picture just as Mark leaned down to kiss her. A real kiss, not the quick peck on the cheek you'd give a business associate. Erin's arms went around his neck like she'd done it 1,000 times before. My phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. Your daughter fell from a balcony. She's at Millbrook General Hospital. Come now. The world tilted sideways. I dropped the phone, started the truck, and floored it toward the hospital, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The emergency room at Millbrook General smelled like disinfectant and fear. I found Sophie in bed 3, her left arm in a sling and a bandage over her right eyebrow. She looked small and fragile under the harsh fluorescent lights, nothing like the tough kid who'd inherited my stubborn streak and her mother's sharp tongue. "Dad!" She tried to sit up when she saw me, wincing. "Easy, kiddo." I pulled a chair next to her bed, my hands shaking as I brushed hair away from her face. What happened? Sophie glanced around the curtained area, making sure we were alone. I followed Mom to the hotel. I know I shouldn't have, but I was worried about her. She's been acting so weird lately. And she was with Mark. In a room on the 3rd floor. I took the elevator up and knocked on the door. Sophie's voice got smaller. Mark answered in just a towel. He was really mad when he saw me. He said I was ruining their fun, that I was just like you, always sticking my nose where it didn't belong. My jaw clenched. Then what? Mom came to the door. She looked embarrassed, but not sorry. Mark kept yelling about how kids today don't respect boundaries. I tried to leave, but he grabbed my arm and said I better keep my mouth shut or there'd be consequences. The rage building in my chest felt like a heart attack in reverse. Instead of my heart stopping, it was beating so fast I thought it might explode. I pulled away from him and stepped backward onto the balcony. The railing was lower than I thought, and She touched the bandage on her forehead. I fell into the bushes. 3 floors down. Where was your mother during all this? Sophie's eyes filled with tears. She was telling Mark to calm down. She didn't even check if I was okay until the hotel security came running. A doctor appeared at the foot of the bed, young, tired-looking, with the kind of bedside manner they teach in medical school, but never quite sounds natural. Mr. Larkin? I'm Dr. Chen. Your daughter has a mild concussion and a dislocated shoulder, but she's going to be fine. We'd like to keep her overnight for observation. What about the fall? 3 stories is... She was very lucky. The landscaping broke her fall, a few feet to the left, and... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. After the doctor left, Sophie grabbed my hand with her good arm. Dad, there's something else. I recorded some of it on my phone before Mark saw me. The audio isn't great, but you can hear him threatening me. And Mom. She hesitated. Mom was laughing when he said I was just like you, like it was funny. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my stomach. Erin had always been ambitious, always focused on climbing the ladder in a town that barely had a ladder to climb. But laughing while some bastard threatened our daughter? That was a line I didn't know she was capable of crossing. Can I see the recording? Sophie fumbled for her phone with her good hand. The video was shaky and the audio was muffled, but I could make out Mark's voice clearly. You little brat, you're just like your loser father, always causing problems. Maybe you need to learn some respect. And then, clear as day, Erin's laughter. I want you to send that to my phone, I said quietly. Dad, what are you going to do? I looked at my daughter, 15 years old, lying in a hospital bed because my wife's boyfriend had gotten physical with her. Sophie had my eyes and Erin's intelligence, but right now she just looked scared. I'm going to fix this, I said. You can't just beat him up. Mom will call the police. I almost smiled. Almost. Kiddo, I spent 8 years in the Navy SEALs. If I wanted to beat someone up, there wouldn't be enough left to call the police about. But that's not how we're going to handle this. Then how? Your mother and her boyfriend want to play grown-up games? Fine. But they're about to learn that some games have consequences they never saw coming. Erin finally showed up at the hospital around 9 p.m., still wearing the red dress but looking disheveled. Her makeup was smeared and her hair was messed up, like she'd been running her hands through it, or like someone else had. Sophie, baby, are you okay? She rushed to the bed, but Sophie turned away from her. I'm fine. No thanks to you. Erin's eyes met mine over Sophie's head. I saw guilt there, but also defiance, like she was daring me to say something. We need to talk, I said. Not here. Not now. Yes. Here. Yes, now. I kept my voice level, but something in my tone made her take a step back. Our daughter fell 3 stories because your boyfriend got physical with her. We're going to discuss that. Mark didn't push her. She lost her balance. After he grabbed her arm and threatened her, "You don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and played Sophie's recording. Erin's face went white as Mark's voice filled the small space, followed by her own laughter. Explain that, I said. Erin glanced around nervously. You're taking this out of context. Mark was just upset. Sophie shouldn't have been there in the first place. Sophie shouldn't have been there? She's 15 years old, Erin. She was worried about her mother. And your response is to let some guy threaten her and then laugh about it. Don't lecture me about parenting, Nick. You're never home anyway. I'm never home because I'm working. To pay for this house, and your car, and Sophie's school clothes, and everything else you seem to think just magically appears. Sophie was watching us like a tennis match, her eyes moving back and forth between her parents as 16 years of marriage finally started to crumble in public. I want a divorce, Erin said suddenly. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'd been expecting them, but hearing them out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. Fine, I said. But you should know something first. What? I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. I know about the hotel room. I know about the afternoon meetings that run late. I know about the new clothes and the new attitude. And now I know what kind of person you really are. Erin's face flushed red. You followed me? I followed my instincts. They've never let me down before. You can't prove anything. I held up my phone. Actually, I can. Photos, audio recordings, credit card statements I pulled this afternoon. You've been sloppy, Erin. For a lawyer, you're not very good at covering your tracks. You went through my credit cards? Joint account, remember? Everything you've been spending on your boyfriend, I've been paying for. The hotel rooms, the dinners, the new wardrobe. Thanks for that, by the way. Erin looked like she wanted to say something, but a nurse appeared and asked us to keep it down. Other patients were trying to sleep. We'll finish this at home, Erin said. No, I replied. We'll finish this in court. And Erin, when we do, make sure your boyfriend's lawyer is better than you are. Because after what happened to Sophie tonight, this isn't just about adultery anymore. I stayed with Sophie until she fell asleep, then drove home through the empty streets of Willowfield. The house felt different when I walked in, smaller, colder, like all the life had been sucked out of it. I sat at the kitchen table and made a list of everything I needed to do. First, I was going to move all our money out of the joint accounts and into a new account with only my name on it. Erin wanted a divorce? Fine, but she wasn't going to finance her new life with my money. Second, I was going to have a conversation with Mark Heller, a private conversation, just the two of us. Third, I was going to make sure everyone in Willowfield knew exactly what kind of people they were dealing with. I'd spent 8 years in the military learning how to plan operations and execute them flawlessly. Erin and her boyfriend had just declared war on my family. They were about to learn that some wars you can't win. The next morning, I was at First National Bank when they opened at 9 a.m. Willowfield only had one bank, and everyone knew everyone else's business, but money talks louder than gossip. I moved $43,000, our entire savings account, plus the money market account Erin didn't think I knew about, into a new account with only my signature required. "Big purchase coming up, Nick?" asked Janet, the teller who'd been handling my deposit since I got out of the Navy. "You could say that," I replied. "Home improvements." It wasn't technically a lie. I was about to improve my home by getting rid of the people who were making it toxic. From the bank, I drove to Sophie's school. She was being released from the hospital that afternoon, but I wanted to talk to her principal first. Willowfield High looked like a prison built by people who'd never seen a prison, all concrete blocks and tiny windows, designed by committee to crush any remaining hope the students might have had. Principal Morrison, no relation to Tank, was a thin, nervous man who'd been trying to retire for 5 years but couldn't afford to. He listened to my story about Sophie's accident with the practiced attention of someone who'd heard every excuse and sob story in the book. "I'm sorry to hear about Sophie's fall, Mr. Larkin, but I'm not sure what you want me to do about it. I want you to know that my wife and I are getting divorced, and that Sophie might need some extra support over the next few months. She's been through a trauma. Of course. We have counselors available. There's something else." I pulled out my phone and played 30 seconds of Sophie's recording, just the part where Mark threatened her. The man on that recording is Mark Heller. He's a local real estate agent, and he's been having an affair with my wife. Last night, he physically threatened my daughter, and she fell 3 stories trying to get away from him. Principal Morrison's face went pale. "Have you contacted the police?" "Not yet. But I wanted you to know, in case Mr. Heller shows up here asking questions about Sophie or trying to contact her. He's not family, he has no legal right to information about her, and I consider him a threat to her safety." "I understand. We'll make a note in her file." I spent the afternoon at the hospital with Sophie, who was feeling better but still looked fragile. The doctor said she could go home but needed to take it easy for a few days. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Are you and Mom really getting divorced?" I'd been dreading this question, but Sophie deserved honesty. "Yeah, kiddo, we are." "Because of Mark?" "Because of a lot of things. Mark is just the most recent thing." Sophie was quiet for a long time, staring out the hospital window at the parking lot. "I used to think you and Mom were perfect together, like in the movies. We were good together for a while. People change, Sophie. Sometimes they change in the same direction, and sometimes they don't. Which direction did you change?" That was a hell of a question from a 15-year-old. "I don't think I changed much at all. I'm still the same guy who married your mom 16 years ago. I still want the same things. A family, a home, people who care about each other. Your mom wants different things now." "Like what?" "Money, status, excitement, things I can't give her." Sophie turned to look at me. "Do you hate her?" I thought about that. Did I hate Erin? Or was I just disappointed that the woman I'd fallen in love with had turned into someone I didn't recognize? "No, I don't hate her. But I don't like who she's become." "What about Mark?" Now that was a different question entirely. Mark Heller had put his hands on my daughter and threatened her. He'd been sleeping with my wife and probably laughing about it with his buddies at the gym. He'd turned my family into a joke. Mark's a different story, I said. That evening I drove Sophie home and got her settled on the couch with her pain medication and a stack of movies. Erin still wasn't back, probably at another client meeting that would run until midnight. I made Sophie dinner and we watched an old comedy together, both of us pretending everything was normal. Around 9 p.m., Sophie fell asleep on the couch. I covered her with a blanket and went out to my truck. Murphy's gym stayed open until 10 on weeknights. Tank was closing up when I arrived, but he let me in through the back door. "How's your daughter?" "She'll be fine." Kids are tougher than they look. And the situation with Pretty Boy? I told Tank about the recording, about Erin's reaction, about the divorce. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. "So what's your play?" he asked when I finished. "I'm going to destroy him. Professionally, personally, socially. I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what he did to Sophie. And your wife? She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences." Tank pulled 2 beers from the mini fridge in his office. "You know, back in Afghanistan, we had rules of engagement. Specific guidelines about when and how we could respond to threats. This isn't Afghanistan. No, it's not. But the principle's the same. You identify the threat, you assess the situation, and you respond with overwhelming force. But you have to be smart about it." "I'm listening." Pretty Boy's weakness is his image. Guys like him, their whole identity is built on what other people think of them. Destroy his reputation, and you destroy him. How? Tank smiled grimly. "Leave that to me. I know a lot of people in this town, and they all talk. By tomorrow afternoon, everyone's going to know that Mark Heller pushed a 15-year-old girl off a hotel balcony. That's not exactly what happened. Close enough. And in a town this size, close enough becomes the truth real fast." I drove home feeling better than I had in months. For the first time since this whole mess started, I had a plan. More than that, I had allies. Tank knew everyone in Willowfield's blue-collar community, the mechanics, the construction workers, the cops, the firefighters. These were people who didn't have much patience for pretty boys who hurt kids. Erin's car was in the driveway when I got home. I found her in the kitchen, making herself a drink. She'd changed out of the red dress into jeans and a sweater, trying to look like the old Erin. But I could see through the act now. "How's Sophie?" she asked without looking at me. "She's fine." "No thanks to your boyfriend. Mark didn't push her, Nick. She lost her balance. After he grabbed her and threatened her. She was trespassing in a private hotel room. She's 15, Erin. She's our daughter. She was worried about you." Erin finally turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not guilt, or shame, or even anger. It was contempt. "Sophie needs to learn that actions have consequences," she said. "You're right," I replied. "They do." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when it's the kind of word that makes people feel superior to their neighbors. Tank had been busy. The messages were from clients, friends, neighbors, and people I barely knew. All of them had heard some version of the story. Mark Heller had gotten violent with a teenage girl at a hotel, and she'd ended up in the hospital. The details got more dramatic with each retelling, but the core truth remained the same. Sophie was still asleep on the couch when I went downstairs. I made coffee and checked my phone again. 3 more messages had come in while I was in the kitchen. "Nick, heard about Sophie. If you need anything, call me. Jim Patterson." Jim Patterson was Erin's boss, the senior partner at Patterson and Associates. If he was reaching out to me directly, it meant the story had reached the professional community. "Heard what happened to your girl. Mark Heller's a piece of shit. Let me know if you need backup." Tony Ricci. Tony owned the biggest construction company in town and had never liked Mark's flashy style. He also had connections with every tradesman within 50 miles. Nick, I'm so sorry about Sophie. That man should be in jail. Call me if you need to talk. Sarah Chen. Sarah was a nurse at Millbrook General and the mother of one of Sophie's classmates. If she was spreading the story through the hospital, it would reach every family in the school district within hours. My phone rang. Tank. You see the news this morning? He asked. What news? Channel 8. They're running a story about hotel safety after a local teenager was injured in a fall. They don't mention names, but everyone knows who they're talking about. I turned on the TV. The story was the third item on the morning news. A 15-year-old Willowfield girl was hospitalized Tuesday night after falling from a third-floor balcony at the Millbrook Grand Hotel. The incident is under investigation by hotel security and local authorities. The reporter didn't mention Mark by name, but she did note that the girl was visiting the hotel room of a family acquaintance when the incident occurred. How did they get the story? I asked Tank. Funny thing about small towns. People talk, and when people talk long enough, eventually someone talks to a reporter. Sophie woke up around noon, moving carefully but looking much better. Her color was back to normal, and the haunted look in her eyes had faded. Dad, my phone's been buzzing all morning. Everyone at school knows what happened. How do you feel about that? She thought for a moment. Good, I think. I was worried people would think I was lying, or that it was my fault somehow, but everyone's being really nice. It wasn't your fault, Sophie. None of this is your fault. I know. But sometimes knowing something and feeling it are different things. That afternoon, I drove to Mark's real estate office. Heller and Associates occupied a storefront on Main Street, right next to the coffee shop where half the town gathered every morning to gossip. The timing wasn't accidental. Mark was on the phone when I walked in, but he hung up quickly when he saw me. He looked nervous, which was smart of him. Nick, I heard about Sophie's accident. How is she? She's fine, but we need to talk. Look, I know you're upset, but what happened was really just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I kept my voice calm and level. You threatened my 15-year-old daughter, and she fell 3 stories trying to get away from you. That's your idea of a misunderstanding? Mark glanced toward the front window, where people were walking by on the sidewalk. Maybe we should discuss this privately. No, I think here is perfect. I pulled out my phone. I have a recording of you threatening Sophie. Would you like to hear it? Mark's face went pale. That's taken out of context. Really? What's the proper context for telling a 15-year-old girl that she needs to learn some respect? She was interrupting a private moment between your wife and me. My wife and you. I let that hang in the air for a moment. So you admit you're having an affair with Erin? Your marriage problems aren't my fault, Nick. No, but putting your hands on my daughter is definitely your fault. Mark stood up from behind his desk, trying to use his height to intimidate me. He was about 6'2", probably worked out regularly, and had the kind of artificial confidence that came from never being in a real fight. I think you should leave, he said. I think you should apologize. For what? For threatening my daughter, for grabbing her arm, for creating the situation that put her in the hospital. I'm not apologizing for anything. Sophie was trespassing, and she got what she deserved. The words were barely out of his mouth before I moved. 8 years of military training kicked in, and suddenly, Mark was pressed against the wall with my forearm across his throat. Let me explain something to you, Mark, I said quietly. I've killed people for my country. Professional killers, trained soldiers, men who were a lot tougher than you. So when some small-town pretty boy threatens my daughter, it doesn't really register as a serious problem. Mark tried to push me away, but I didn't budge. You're assaulting me. No, I'm educating you. There's a difference. I pressed a little harder. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from my daughter. You're going to stay away from my wife until our divorce is final. And you're going to think very carefully about whether you want to keep living in a town where everyone knows what you did. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining your options. I stepped back, letting him breathe normally again. Option 1. You leave town, find a new job somewhere else, and never come back. Option 2. You stay here and deal with the consequences of your actions. What consequences? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Mark, you just admitted to having an affair with a married woman. You physically threatened a 15-year-old girl. You showed no remorse when she was injured. And you did all of this in a town where everyone talks and no one forgets. So how many clients do you think you'll have left by the end of the week? How many people are going to trust their biggest investment to a man who hurts children? Mark's confident expression started to crack. You can't destroy my business just because you're angry about your marriage. Watch me. I walked out of his office and straight into Murphy's coffee shop next door. The lunch crowd was in full swing: teachers, shop owners, retirees, and housewives who formed the social backbone of Willowfield. "Afternoon, Nick," called out Murphy, the owner. "How's Sophie doing?" "She's tough. She'll be fine." I ordered a coffee and sat down at a table in the center of the room, where everyone could hear me clearly. "I just want to thank everyone who's reached out about Sophie," I said, speaking to the room in general. "It means a lot to know that people in this town still look out for each other's kids." "That man should be arrested," said Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher who'd taught half the adults in town, putting his hands on a child like that. "The police are looking into it," I replied, which wasn't exactly true, but wasn't exactly false either. The whole situation is just disappointing. You think you know someone, and then something like this happens. "I never trusted that Heller boy," said Frank Ricci, Tony's father and the unofficial mayor of Willowfield's Italian community. "Too slick, too smooth. Men like that, they think rules don't apply to them." "Well, he's about to learn different," said Murphy. "I heard 3 people canceled appointments with him just this morning." I finished my coffee and left, satisfied that the message was spreading exactly as I'd hoped. In a town like Willowfield, reputation was everything. And Mark Heller's reputation was about to become his biggest liability. That evening, Erin came home looking like she'd been through a war. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and her hands were shaking. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening. You have to stop this. Mark's business is falling apart. People are canceling contracts, refusing to work with him. His boss is talking about letting him go." "That's unfortunate. Nick, this is destroying him." "Good." Erin stared at me like she'd never seen me before. "What happened to you?" "You used to be a good man." "I'm still a good man, Erin. I'm just not a stupid man anymore." "Mark didn't mean for Sophie to get hurt." "But she did get hurt. And instead of apologizing or showing any concern, he told me she got what she deserved. He was upset. He didn't mean it." "Yes, he did. And you know what the really sad part is? You're defending him instead of your own daughter." Erin's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, human. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered. "But it did happen. And now we all have to live with the consequences. Can't we work this out? Go to counseling? Try to fix things?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and tried to find some trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with. But all I saw was a stranger who'd betrayed everything we'd built together. "Erin, you had an affair. You chose another man over your family. You stood by while he threatened our daughter, and you laughed when he compared her to me like it was an insult. What exactly do you think we're going to work out?" "I made mistakes." "No, you made choices. There's a difference." Sophie appeared in the doorway, still moving carefully but looking stronger than she had since the accident. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby. Do you love Mark?" The question hung in the air like a live wire. Erin looked back and forth between Sophie and me, trapped between honesty and damage control. It's complicated, Sophie. No, it's not. Do you love him? Erin's silence was answer enough. Then I think you should go be with him, Sophie said quietly. Dad and I will be fine. And in that moment, I realized my daughter had just said what I'd been thinking but hadn't been able to put into words. This wasn't about saving a marriage anymore. This was about accepting that some things couldn't be fixed, only survived. Sophie's right, I said. Go be with Mark. But understand that when you walk out that door, you're not just leaving me. You're leaving your daughter too. Erin looked like I'd slapped her. Sophie will always be my daughter. Will she? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already chosen what's more important to you. Erin packed a bag that night and left for Mark's apartment across town. Sophie and I watched her go from the living room window, neither of us saying anything until her taillights disappeared around the corner. Dad? Yeah. Are we going to be okay? I put my arm around my daughter and pulled her close. We're going to be better than okay, kiddo. We're going to be free. 3 weeks later, Mark Heller's real estate license was suspended, pending an investigation by the state licensing board. Someone had filed a complaint alleging unprofessional conduct and moral turpitude. The complaint was anonymous, but it included detailed documentation of Mark's affair with a married client and his involvement in an incident that resulted in injury to a minor. I had no idea who might have filed such a thorough and damaging complaint. Erin moved in with Mark permanently after his roommate suddenly decided to relocate to Albany. The roommate's departure might have had something to do with the fact that his employer, a construction company owned by Tony Ricci, had transferred him to a project upstate. Again, I had no idea how these things happened. Small towns were funny that way. Sophie was doing better in school and had started seeing the counselor twice a week. She was also taking self-defense classes at Murphy's gym, where Tank was teaching her the basics of situational awareness and personal protection. I don't want to be scared anymore, she told me one evening after practice. I want to be ready. Ready for what? For whatever comes next. The divorce proceedings were moving forward smoothly. Erin had hired Rita Valdez, the most expensive divorce attorney in the county, but Rita was having trouble building a case when her client had been caught in adultery and had essentially abandoned the marital home. I was representing myself, which everyone said was a mistake. But I'd spent months documenting every aspect of our marriage, our finances, and the events leading up to the separation. I had photographs, recordings, bank records, and witness statements. Most importantly, I had Sophie's testimony about what had happened at the hotel. Your wife's attorney wants to negotiate, my buddy Tank told me one afternoon. He'd been sitting in on the proceedings as a character witness. What kind of negotiation? She wants joint custody of Sophie and half the marital assets. What did you tell her? I told her that after what happened at the hotel, she'd be lucky to get supervised visitation. The truth was, I didn't want to keep Sophie away from her mother permanently. Despite everything that had happened, Erin was still Sophie's mom. But I also wasn't going to pretend that nothing had changed. She can see Sophie whenever Sophie wants to see her, I said. But she doesn't get to make decisions about Sophie's life anymore. And she doesn't get half of anything. She walked out on her family for another man. Actions have consequences. 2 days before the final divorce hearing, I got a call from Jim Patterson, Erin's boss. Nick, I need to talk to you about Erin. What about her? She's been making mistakes at work. Missing deadlines, forgetting court dates, showing up late. Yesterday, she missed a deposition completely. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not really my problem anymore. The thing is, I think she's been drinking. And I think it's affecting her judgment. That stopped me cold. Erin had always been a light drinker, a glass of wine with dinner maybe, but never anything more serious. How bad is it? Bad enough that I'm going to have to let her go if it doesn't improve. And Nick? I wanted you to know because of Sophie. If Erin's having problems with alcohol, that's going to affect any custody arrangements. I thanked Jim and hung up, feeling something I hadn't expected: pity. Erin had thrown away her marriage, damaged her relationship with her daughter, and now she was apparently throwing away her career too. All for a man who was about to lose his real estate license and probably his job. That night, Sophie and I were having dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Nick, it's Mark. We need to talk." "No, we don't. Please, it's about Erin. She's not doing well." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at Murphy's coffee shop the next morning. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, with the kind of desperate expression you see on men who've finally realized they're in over their heads. "She's drinking every day now," he said, without preamble. "She starts with coffee and Bailey's in the morning and doesn't stop until she passes out at night." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can't handle it anymore. She cries constantly. She blames me for everything that's happened, and she keeps talking about how she's lost her daughter. She made her choices. I know that. But Nick, she's talking about hurting herself. And I don't know what to do." I studied Mark's face, looking for signs that this was some kind of manipulation or trick. But all I saw was genuine fear. "What do you want from me?" "Talk to her. Please." "She won't listen to me anymore, but maybe she'll listen to you." "Why would I do that?" "Because despite everything that's happened, you're a good man. And because Sophie deserves to have a mother who's alive and sober, even if she's not a good mother." I found Erin at Mark's apartment that afternoon, sitting on the couch in pajamas and drinking wine from a coffee mug. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment I didn't recognize her. Her face was puffy, her eyes were bloodshot, and she'd lost weight in all the wrong places. "Nick? What are you doing here?" "Mark called me. He's worried about you." "Mark's a coward. He wants me gone but doesn't have the balls to tell me himself." "Is that true?" Erin laughed bitterly. "Turns out having an affair is a lot more fun than living with the consequences of having an affair. Who knew?" I sat down across from her, keeping my distance but close enough to talk quietly. "Erin, you need help. I need my life back. I need my daughter back. I need to undo the last 6 months and make different choices." "You can't undo anything, but you can stop making things worse." "How?" "How do I stop making things worse? I've lost my job, I'm about to lose my house, my daughter won't talk to me, and the man I threw away my marriage for is already looking for ways to get rid of me." "You get sober. You get help. You figure out how to be the kind of person Sophie can respect, even if she can't forgive you right away." Erin stared into her wine mug like it held the answers to all her problems. "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" "I don't know. But I know she'll never forgive you if you drink yourself to death." "Would you care?" If I drank myself to death? That was a hell of a question. Would I care if the woman who'd betrayed me and abandoned our daughter destroyed herself completely? "Yeah," I said finally. "I would care. Not because I love you anymore, but because Sophie loves you. And losing her mother would hurt her in ways she might never recover from." Erin started crying then, not the pretty tears she used to cry when she wanted something, but ugly, broken sobs that came from somewhere deep and damaged. "I'm so sorry, Nick. I'm sorry about everything. I know you are. Can you ever forgive me?" I thought about that question for a long time. Could I forgive the woman who'd cheated on me, laughed when our daughter was threatened, and chosen a stranger over her own family? "Maybe someday," I said, "but not today. And not until you forgive yourself." The divorce was finalized on a gray Thursday morning in November. Erin showed up sober and dressed professionally, but she looked like a ghost of her former self. The judge awarded me primary custody of Sophie, with Erin getting supervised visitation once she completed a substance abuse program. She also awarded me the house, the savings accounts, and most of the other marital assets. Erin's adultery and abandonment had made the financial settlement pretty straightforward. "I'm sorry it came to this," Erin said to me outside the courthouse. So am I. Will you tell Sophie that I love her? Tell her yourself. But do it when you're sober and do it when you mean it. Mark was waiting by Erin's car, looking uncomfortable. He'd managed to keep his real estate license after agreeing to take an ethics course and pay a substantial fine, but his business was still struggling. Turns out, reputation mattered in small towns, and his reputation was permanently damaged. "Nick," he said as I walked past. I stopped and turned around. "I'm sorry. About Sophie, about everything. I was trying to impress Erin, and I handled the whole situation badly." "Yes, you did. Is there anything I can do to make it right?" I looked at this man who'd helped destroy my marriage and threatened my daughter. He looked smaller now, beaten down by the consequences of his actions. "Take care of Erin," I said. "Help her get sober. Help her become the kind of person who deserves to be in Sophie's life. Do that, and we'll call it even." That evening, Sophie and I ordered pizza and watched old movies, just like we had the night she came home from the hospital. But everything was different now. The house felt peaceful instead of tense. We could talk without wondering who was listening or what mood Erin would be in when she got home. "Dad? Yeah? Do you think Mom will get better?" "I think she has a chance to get better. Whether she takes that chance or not is up to her." "Do you miss her?" "I miss who she used to be, but I don't miss who she became." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand that." "How are you doing with all this?" "Better than I thought I would. It's sad, but it's also kind of a relief. Like we don't have to pretend everything's okay anymore." "No more pretending," I agreed. 6 months later, I got a call from Erin. She'd completed a 30-day treatment program and was living in a sober living facility in Albany. She had a job at a small law firm and was going to AA meetings every day. "I was wondering if I could see Sophie," she said. "Just for an hour, maybe for coffee." "That's up to Sophie." "Would you ask her?" I asked Sophie that night over dinner. She thought about it for a long time before answering. "I think I'd like to see her. But I want you to come with me." "Are you sure?" "Yeah. I'm not ready to be alone with her yet, but I think I'm ready to try." We met Erin at a coffee shop in Albany on a Saturday afternoon. She looked healthier, clear-eyed, better color, like she was actually sleeping at night. She was nervous, fidgeting with her purse and checking her phone. "Hi, baby," she said when Sophie walked in. "Hi, Mom." They talked for an hour about school, about Sophie's self-defense classes, about the books she was reading. Erin didn't make excuses or try to explain her behavior. She just listened and asked questions and tried to reconnect with the daughter she'd abandoned. "I'm proud of you," she told Sophie as we were getting ready to leave. "You're stronger than I was at your age, stronger than I am now." "I had a good teacher," Sophie said, glancing at me. "Yes, you did." As we drove home, Sophie was quiet for a long time. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Good, I think. She seems different. More like the mom I remember from when I was little. People can change if they really want to." "Do you think she really wants to?" "I think she's trying. And that's more than she was doing 6 months ago." We've been meeting Erin for coffee once a month since then. Sophie's relationship with her mother is slowly healing, though it will never be the same as it was before. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild completely. Mark moved to Syracuse after his real estate business finally collapsed. I heard he got a job selling insurance and married a divorced teacher with 2 kids. I hope he learned something from what happened in Willowfield. I hope he treats his new family better than he treated mine. As for me, I'm doing better than I have in years. My contracting business is thriving, Sophie is thriving, and for the first time in a long time, I wake up every morning looking forward to the day ahead instead of just trying to survive it. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled the divorce, whether I was too harsh, too unforgiving, too focused on revenge. The truth is, I don't think of it as revenge. I think of it as consequences. Erin and Mark made choices that hurt my daughter and destroyed my family. They thought they could do whatever they wanted without paying a price. They were wrong. In small towns like Willowfield, reputation matters, character matters, how you treat other people's children matters, and when you forget those things, the town has a way of reminding you. I didn't destroy Mark Heller's business or Erin's career. They did that themselves through their choices and actions. I just made sure the right people knew about those choices and actions. Some people call that revenge. I call it justice. And sometimes in small towns where everyone knows everyone else's business, justice and revenge look exactly the same. Sophie's 16 now, getting ready to apply to colleges. She's smart, confident, and resilient. Everything I hoped she would be and everything Erin used to be before ambition and dissatisfaction poisoned her heart. "Dad," Sophie said to me last week as we were working on her college applications, "do you think you'll ever get married again?" "I don't know. Maybe someday, if I meet the right person." What would the right person be like? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. Someone who understands that family comes first. Someone who thinks being a small-town contractor is a respectable way to make a living. Someone who would never, ever hurt you or let anyone else hurt you. Sophie smiled. That sounds like a pretty good list. Yeah, it is. And you know what? I'm not settling for anything less. Because that's what I learned from the collapse of my marriage and the destruction of Mark Heller's life. Some things are worth fighting for, and some people aren't worth the fight. The trick is knowing the difference.